Welcome. I am Crimey Queen, and if you are joining us for the first time, this is the channel where we have fun with words and numbers, numerology to be precise. I love numerology. Of course, as we're about to commence on our presentation, let's say, let there be light, and there was light. Those are the words of the said God, the God of Genesis, the God who is the spokesperson, the serpent, the snake, the Christ spirit. The We can also say the Buddha, although it had not really come in the numerical values as 5, but when we do the numerical value for the word 4, it comes to 5, so we can say that too. Basically, wherever we can get 5 or 4 or even 6 or 7, we are talking directly about Mother Eve. Now, of course, we have seen Mother Eve displayed in the number 10. Of course, that's where everything began, we could say. This is where we have the yin and yang. This is where we have polarities. This is where we have male, female. So yes, we can really say that Mother Eve is in every aspect of our being. She's also in number 2, because when we do the numerical value for the word 2, we see it comes to 13. Of course, 13 is 4, and of course 4 is, as we say, comes to number 6 when we do the numerical value for the word 4. So basically, I think I did say 5 before, but do excuse me. And so, but I'm just really saying that 4 and 5 have the same numerical value of 24, and 2 plus 4 is 6. There we are talking directly about the said God. Basically, all the numbers, yes, we see leads to the said God, but there are patterns of those numerical values that have got us to seeing that everything seemed to worm its way back to the said God. And that's why we are having so much fun discovering those pathways that will lead us onto the I was going to say the righteousness, but onto Mother Eve, of course. Every child have to get back to mother. You may wander from place to place, but you don't forget your mother entirely. You may never turn back to see how she is, but you don't forget your mother entirely. You cannot, because that's the place where you come from. It's like she's over there and you over here, but remember the word there has in it hair. Okay, so just to give you a little taste, if in case you're new to this channel, this is Mother Eve. Let's give you, wow, an intro of Mother Eve, of course. And for some reason, she just seemed to be looking happier day by day, and I am glad to see that. Now, it's not as if to say anything's changed. It probably is my own or my own interpretation, or through the eyes that I am seeing her now, because she's doing that transformation right there in me. So I am now able to see her with a deeper sense of grace and beauty, and I love that. That's what is maturing is about. When you are maturing, you begin to see beauty like you have never seen beauty before, and I'm feeling so blessed to be able to see Mother Eve in that light. Of course, as she said in her famous words, let there be light. And there was light. Perhaps that light is now shining in me. I shouldn't say perhaps, really, because we all are subjects of that light, but it's the consciousness of the light that really makes it light. That's where we can begin to relate. That's the light. Now, Mother Eve has really informed me about something really special today, because I was looking at my my birth chart, and I was really amazed to see so many sextiles entries. In fact, I have 9 sextile entries in my birth chart. I think, wow, now I think that explains everything about sex right there, because the word nine is actually the love number. And when we do, oh, I've got to do this, I've just got to do this, yes. So it's really just so wonderful. I mean, I did ask Mother Eve for wisdom, and I think she's really doing a wonderful thing in directing my path or directing my attention to this. And it's the other most delicious thing is when you can really see yourself in those revelations. Because again, Mother Eve always say, ask the question, ask and see, where am I in all of this? Wow, I just love it. Okay, so, oh, I think my brush is retiring right here. Okay, now my last presentation was on Steve Jobs, which I really want to do, but amusingly, it's like there is something, oh, something's moving right through me. Mother Eve is moving here. And amazingly, I thought, well, it's like I have something in common with Steve Jobs. Okay, well, it's nothing about laptops because I don't think I'm really cut out to do laptops or Apple Mac, but of course, they're the numbers, have been calling at me. Now, I'm not an astrologer, but I believe now Mother Eve is really directing me to understanding more about astrology. Now, I'm just going to tilt this a little bit so you can see this board more here. Okay, so, but in astrology, or in our natal chart rather, in our birth chart, we have this which is called square. When you have two planets that square each other. Now, I won't be able to say much more than that right now, but it really means that they create a degree of conflict. Well, I can't say much more. They create a bit of conflict, which means that we have an opportunity to work our to grow and work ourselves through that conflict, because this is how we get to overcome. Let's do this conflict. Yeah, then it presents us an opportunity to overcome or to master the art of how these two planets or two energies are impacting on our lives. Now, what I found out in my birth chart, I have 8 of these, 8. Now, I thought, isn't it strange that I should have 8 squares? Also, my life path number is 8. And if I am correct about this, my first name that I was given, which I have changed, is actually the numerical value of 8 as well. And as I also have said, I am an 8th daughter too. So the number 8 is it's there in my makeup. But Steve Jobs had 9 of these. 9 of these. Now, what I come to understand now is that going by the story, this is Steve, and this is myself, Crime Queen here. Okay, and this is Steve here. What I come to understand is that these squares, of course, in your natal chart, it's as if you can't really get away from working through those cycles in your life. And if you get to understand their significance, then of course that is a plus, because you become aware of what you are meant to do. So for instance, if I had a square, or my sun was squared with Mars, for instance, then I would understand, if I take the time to understand the characteristics of both zodiac signs, in that sense, Mars and how the sun performs. And of course, that would give me uh, a an edge, we could say, in how I could work through those the conflicts that they would present. This is where we would be having like the two gods opposing each other, and we would have to be like acting referee and say, okay, now you have done this and now you have done this, and we are acting referee. Basically, we are taking the position of the god force to how those two other gods are behaving. And we have, of course, learned to find an amicable way where there is something good and beneficial to be learned from that conflict that we could use to further ourselves. We could use, this is where we get our trophies, because we have mastered the art of that square. It's like, of course, if you're squaring someone or two people are squaring each other, it's like they're ready to, have a match. This is what it's about. Now, another amazing thing that happened that I went in consultation with Mother Eve about on these squares is that because, of course, when I first spotted that I had eight squares, and I also have worked out that a very close friend of mine too have 8 squares. I was very intrigued by that, and it was really my first time of really looking at squares. And then I really wondered about the significance of me having a relationship, or the quality of the relationship with another person who also have this 8 squares. So that, of course, as I say, I was concerned about that. And curiously, I thought, well, let me just look at Steve Jobs, because, of course, Job is 9, but when we did Steve, Steve is 8. The word Steve equals 17, and that is 8. And of course, 8 plus 9 still gives us Steve Jobs. Of course, that would be, Jobs is 10 now, but Job would be 9. So this is where we had 18. I just want to ensure that I've got this right. So this is 9, 10. Of course, 10 plus 8 would be 18. So I think I have done, I need to go over this. All right. So yes, 10 plus 8 would be 18. And of course, that means his life path, his number would be 9. That would be his soul, is it called, his expression number would be 9. His expression number right there. Okay, but in his date of birth, for instance, his number would be, it would be 6. Oh, sorry, I'm just saying 6 plus 2 and 2, so that would be 10. So we see that, as I said before and pointed out, he's got those 10s. He would have 3 10s here already. Okay, but the point I really want to make right here is that it's the squares. It's about the squares. And I did notice, and I thought, okay, I'll just Google which I felt a little bit as if it was a bit intrusive, although he's passed on, but I don't recall having done this before. And so, well, I haven't. And for someone, of course, in the limelight, I know when we see the limelight again, the light, and which Steve Jobs is really in the light. Everyone's got a laptop or would know about Steve Jobs, whether you did or you didn't. So, and then I realized that he has 9 squares. So I keep saying so because this is where Mother Eve tells me something and I ask a question. And as I have always said, when you ask a question, be prepared to act upon it. So what it is that I am talking about number 8 and looking at this 8, the 8 in the mouth, 8 in the mouth, which of course the mouth is 5. So the mouth is what swallows up 8. This is the thing we have been always led to think that, of course, like 8 is greater than 5 and so on. But that's why Mother Eve asked us to count backwards so we can begin to see how the numbers have their function but on different areas of examination. So there Mother Eve is saying, okay, this is the mouth, and of course talking about Steve Jobs, of course the apple equals 5. This is the apple, and we have seen how he's got 8 as Steve, the first name. The first name equals 8, which is 17, and that's the God number. And of course, that's directly in my life path number as well. So that got me curious. These are the things that I'm talking about. And there, so Mother Eve is really saying, well, this is what I want you to pay attention to. So she's talking about the 5th dimension. I have mentioned that in previous presentations. So I'm wondering, I was kind of thinking, well, how is the 8th? So you were talking about the 8th dimension, Mother Eve. Does that mean people with the life path number 8 have to be very concerned at this moment because we are moving into the 8th dimension? I was just really trying to find the correlations. But when I saw the 8 squares in my birth chart, I thought, well, that is really telling me something, because it's evidently it is really reflecting that I have gone through a lot of life experiences that has been very challenging and very conflicting, we could say that. And I have had to work through a lot of those conflicts to bring about some sort of resolution within myself, meaning getting the gods to work in unison, getting the gods to be balanced, and taking my position of saying, okay, well, I've had enough of this now. This is time for us to have a change. So I have found my voice, so to speak. And then I was really looking at the squares. I know I'm going back and forth, but I'm doing serpent snake thing here, and that's okay. I'm hoping you find that okay too. And of course, I was realizing, well, I said to Mother Eve, that's another thing that really struck my attention, which I really ought to have mentioned before, is that people are talking about 144,000 people are going to be saved, whatever it is, like getting into this new dimension. Now, I got curious about 144 when numerical terms that equals 9, like in Steve Jobs expression number, that's 9. Like I say, 9 is birthing. And so I asked Mother Eve, because I thought it was a little bit silly that people are thinking of all the billions of people on the planet, how would it be just 144 people would be going into that dimension? I felt it was, and Mother Eve said, well, yes. So I said, but because I'm always like interpreting the numbers as well as in numerical values, and thinking that, well, thinking that King James or whoever wrote the Bible have been playing that game throughout. So with the numbers as well. So Mother Eve, I asked several times, and Mother Eve really said, yes, it is 144,000 people moving into this the 5th and 8th dimension. She mentions the 5th dimensions. The 5th dimension is the same as the 8th dimension. It's as if they are one and the same. Of course, now that makes sense. It's like the 8th right there in the mouth is reflecting the balance in the tongue. This is where it is said the tongue is that double-edged sword. So the 8 now right here is really a symbol of that you have mastered the art of creating that balance. That's what Mother Eve really calls people to eat of the number 8, so to speak. It's when you have swallowed that, and that's why Mother Eve swallows things, as you know, with the snake, swallows things whole, swallow the food whole. Now, I thought it was about breaking it. Of course, I suppose it gets broken down in the throat or wherever it does. But Mother Eve now is saying really that people with, I know this may sound a little bit, you know, far, and I don't know, however it sounds, but now this is the thing that I ought to really pay attention to. You ask a question. So I even asked Mother Eve, for instance, do I tell people about this? Should I tell people about this? And the answer is yes. So so people with 8 squares in their birth chart are moving into that new dimension, that 5th dimension, the 8th dimension. That's the message. I said it now. So of course Steve Jobs was definitely in the 5th and 8th dimension to have done what he did. This is what we are seeing here now. I will go back on Steve Jobs as well, because I feel there is so much more to the wonderfulness of his art, and how the numbers also play out in his date of birth, his date of death, and even the date of when all this was published. It is all in sync. So as we see that his expression number, as we say, is shows 9, but of course some people also consider that the first numerical value for your name, the first name, which everyone would say Steve, that energy is really that which sets you up, so to speak, because when we say sets you up, that is the stage. That is the stage that you are acting on. And we see that is very evident there in his chart and his name. So I mean, as I say, I'm no astrologer, but I realize as well that he had perhaps about 4 or 6 sextiles in his chart. But I am really amazed that I have as many as 9. I'm thinking, is that for real? You know, if there's anyone out there who has 9 sextiles in your birth chart, please to let me know. Oh, it really sextiles entries in your birth chart, let me know. And I also have 8 squares, you know, so the 8 squares now really helps me to understand why I had gone through all of the conflicts that I did. Now another thing Mother Eve says in all of this is that when you have gone through your squares in that sense, like now I am realizing that it's like it coincides now. It does coincide with the fact I will say that I have like got out of the sack. I have got to work out the reef, because that's the thing, the reef, hey, the squares, or if you were to say a squares of 4 points, again 2 4s are 8, we would see that right there. So that is what Mother Eve is really getting my attention to see, that where am I in all of this when I ask the question. So I have now gone through these 3 cycles, and I'm sure there are more cycles, but it's like now I am feeling confident that I have gone through headquarters, because going through headquarters, that's what it is about. This is where you pay your dues to the Inland Revenue. So again, if you are new to this channel, this is the sacrifice template. This is Mother Eve. This is Mother Eve. She calls us home. She is calling us to say, come, I want you to hear my side of the story. I want you to know that, it's time to get out of that sack. We haven't got time now. All the time now is not for the sack. You ought to be out of the sack, working out the reef. And the reef is where, of course, it's like you are ending one cycle here, because 5 is about ending. And then, of course, you are ending there. The other cycle here is the beginning. So it's 5 to 9. Basically, you are ending one and you are beginning here. So beginning is like where you go, you pay your dues to the Inland Revenue, but Mother Eve is there with you because that E is right here. The E is her signature, which forms the 8-petal flower. There again, this is what I mean about this sacrifice template. It's beautiful. Look at the E right here at the end. It's like, although you would have paid your dues to the Inland Revenue, she is saying, I know that you are pain and this may be painful, but I'm there with you. So the E forms an M and it forms a 3 and it forms the E, of course, and the W, and that is the 8-petal flower. Mother Eve is calling us, and this is where we really we become, or we find ourselves in the 8th dimension. This is the 8th dimension, and it's also the 5th dimension. Now I am seeing it even clearer. So the birthing of that which we, like Steve Jobs with his number 9, and I have 2 9s in my date of birth as well. I'm just trying to add myself, include myself here too. So it's that in the end of the wood sacrifice, this is where we see that the sacrifice template is so robust, is that she is there at the end of the word sacrifice to say, I am there with you, no matter what pain you are going through, because you would have gone through your kundalini or your pineal gland being activated, and there you would have had to go through a sense of leaving certain things behind, leaving, giving up certain things. Oh, this is, we could call that a sort of offering in itself. And so she's telling us, you would still have that 8. This is where you get set. This is the set. This is the set, as it were a stage, and this is where we are now ready to play our part on the 8-petal flower. The 8-petal flower of life. I hope you have enjoyed this. I hope you have found this intriguing, and well, for me it really is. And I hope I have done this justice in the way that Mother Eve would want it conveyed, of course. It really is a delicious thing. It does make me feel a little bit concerned about the people that I love, and where are they going to be, but I'm sure that they are where they are meant to be. So with that, I say, let there be light, and there was light.